Hello everyone, welcome to the video series on Scratch. In this video we will see a few other blocks in Scratch and learn about the XY grid in detail. Let's begin with the control menu of this block palette. The control menu has blocks which help you to keep a control over the script for a sprite. What do you mean by getting a control over the scripts? Like suppose if you have a set of instructions which is repeated every time for a sprite, then you can use the repeat block. If you want your sprite to do something when a certain condition occurs, is satisfied, if a certain condition is satisfied, like suppose you're making a game and in the game when your score is 10, you want to display a winner backdrop, then you can use control blocks to do this. Let's see some of the blocks in the control menu. The first is the wait 1 seconds block. This wait 1 seconds block will execute your instructions with the weight of the seconds you have specified here. Let's take an example. Suppose I want my sprite to move some steps, then wait for 1 second or say 2 seconds, and then you can say glide, or you can I want my sprite to turn right by 50 degrees after a wait of 2 seconds. So what will happen is, when I run this code, the sprite will move some steps, then after waiting for some time it will run this block, that is still the sprite 1 in the right direction. You can see it has waited for some seconds and then it tilted the sprite by 50 degrees. So this is the function of wait 2 seconds block. Let's reset our position of the sprite. Now coming on to the next block in the control menu is the repeat 10 block. The repeat 10 block will repeat the blocks inside this jaw of the repeat 10 block the number of times you specify. Like suppose if I want my sprite to appear at a random position 5 times or 10 times, let's see 10 times. So you can see how quickly it happened. If I wanted to go to a random position say 4 times, it's very quick. Let's add the wait seconds block which we just learned about. So to make this go a bit slower, so that you can see that this block, that the sprite is going to a random position 4 times. Now let's run this code. 1, 2, 3 and 4. You saw this block inside, the blocks inside the repeat block got repeated 4 times. Moving on to the forever block. The forever block will run the blocks inside its jaw till you don't press the stop button. Like suppose let's take the same example. I want my sprite to go to random position continuously with a wait of 1 second between each position switch till I don't press the stop button. So let's run this code. As you saw in the repeat block, after running the code the mentioned number of times, the code stopped here on the stage. But here in the forever block, until you don't press the red button, that is the stop button, the sprite 1 will keep on moving to a random position. So in order to stop the code when you are using the forever block, you need to press on the stop button. Next, we have the if-then block. The if-then block will help you run certain code when a condition you met a condition you specified here in this diamond slot is being satisfied. Like suppose I will add another sprite called as ball. Now what I want is when the cat sprite touches this ball, I want the code to stop. So what I'll do is, from the sensing menu, we'll learn about this menu in detail later. So for right now, I'm selecting the touching mouse pointer block. From here in the drop down, I will select the ball sprite. What I want to do is, when the cat sprite touches the ball sprite, then I want to display a message, or I want the cat sprite to say a message that I have touched the ball. So to do that, we'll go to the looks menu and select the say hello for 2 seconds block, wherein I will say I have touched the ball. Let's run this code. To do that, we will also be adding a when green flag clicked block and put this whole code that is inside the forever loop. So what will happen is, the sprite will continuously go to a random position. The sprite will continuously go to a random position on the stage, and while it's going to its random position, changing its position, if it touches the ball, then it will say I have touched the ball. Let's run this code. As you can see, once the cat sprite touched the ball, the code has stopped. So this is the use of the if-then block. Let me explain you this also with a simpler example. I will be using the greater than block from the operators menu. Like suppose if I add a value here, say 100. If this value 100 is greater than 50, then I want the cat to say "100 is greater than 50. As you can see, since 100 is greater than 50, the cat said 100 is greater than 50. That is, this condition was satisfied. If suppose I put 50 and 50 here, so since this condition will not be satisfied, the cat won't say anything. Let's see. You can see the cat didn't say anything, as this condition was false and or it was not satisfied. So this is it for the controls menu. Moving on to the sensing menu. The sensing menu will help your sprite sense other sprites used in the project, or detect other sprites used in the project, and also sense the backdrops or colors used in the project. Let's see some of the blocks of the sensing menu. The first is touching mouse pointer block. The touching mouse pointer block will detect whether the sprite is touching the mouse pointer or not. If I click on this block, currently as the sprite is not touching the mouse pointer, you can see this cursor that I am hovering here. If the sprite is not touching this mouse pointer, then it will return me false. If the sprite is touching the mouse pointer, then it will return me true. Currently it will give me false as the sprite 1 is not touching the mouse pointer. Now suppose there are other options as well, that if the sprite is touching a edge, like you can detect whether if the sprite is suppose here at the edge of the stage, then it will return true, that yes, the sprite is touching the edge of the stage. If the sprite is anywhere in between this on the stage, then it will give false, that the sprite is not touching the stage or touching the edge of the stage. The other option in this was whether you want to check if this sprite is touching another sprite. So here we have another sprite called as ball. Now if this cat sprite is touching this ball sprite, then it will give a value of true. If it is not, then it will give a value of false. Currently this sprite is not touching the ball sprite, so it will give false. If I move this sprite here and then I click on this, then you will get a value of true because it is touching the ball. Next, we have the key space pressed block. This block will help you to detect if you are pressing any button or any key on your keyboard. So suppose if I press the space key on my keyboard, it will give me a value of true. When I am not pressing the space key on the keyboard, it will give me false. If I am pressing my space key on the keyboard, it will give true. Similarly, there are other options like the up arrow. If I am pressing the up arrow key on my keyboard, it will give true. If I am not pressing it, I will get false. So using this, you can detect whether the specified keys from here have been pressed or not. Moving on to the operators menu. The operators menu has blocks which help you to perform math operations. Like you can add two numbers, you can subtract, you can multiply, and you can divide. Let's see an example of each of these blocks. Suppose I want to add two numbers which are 5 and say 4. So 5 plus 4 is 9. If I click on this block, you can see the value is 9. If I want to subtract two numbers such as 8 and 2, so 8 minus 2 is 6. So if I click on this block, you can see the value is 6. If I want to multiply two numbers, say 5 into 2. 5 times 2 is 10. So the value generated or given by this block will be 10. If I want to divide two numbers, say 6 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. You can see it has given me that value. Now we have the greater than block, less than 50 block, and equal to block. The greater than 50 block will tell me whether number 1, that is in this slot, which is number 1, and is greater than number 2 or not. Like suppose, as I said earlier, if 100 is greater than 50, then it will give me a true value. If the number in this left slot is not greater than 50, say it is 20, here 20 is not greater than 50, then it will give me a false value. You can also change this 50 to any number you want. Suppose 20 is not greater than 100, so it will give me a false value. If I change this, you can see 20 is greater than 10, so I'll get a true value. Similarly, the less than block. If the given number if number 1 is less than the specified number 2, then I will get a true value. If it is not, then I'll get a false value. Now suppose 20 is less than 50, so I will get a true value. If I put 100, 100 is not less than 50, so I will get a false value. Now we have the equal to block. If the number 1 is not equal to or not same as number 2, then I will get a false value. If the number is, both the numbers are same, then I'll get a true value. Like suppose if I have 100 here, 100 is not equal to 50, so I will get a false value. But if I put 50 here, then I'll get a true value as both the numbers are same. Number 1 is 50 and number 2 is also 50, so I will get true. And they both are equal, so I will get a true value. Let's move on to variables. Variables help you to store data for your project. Like suppose if you are building a game, and as you know, every game has scores. So if you want to store the scores for your game, then you use variables. These are the three main blocks that we use for any variable. First, let's see how we can create our own variable. The default is my variable. Let's see how we can create our own variable. To create your own variable, you have to click on Make a Variable option, and suppose I want to store the score for a game, so I will create a score variable. Now you can see these two options here, for all sprites and for this sprite only. If I click on for this sprite, then the current sprite which you have highlighted, which is the sprite 1, the score variable will be created for this sprite. If I select the option for all sprites, then it will be created for all the sprites in the project. So let's click this, and since I want this to be for all the sprites on the project, I'll keep it as it is and move on to click on OK. So you can see the variable you created is shown here in this list. You can select the variable, your variable, by clicking on this drop down and selecting the variable that you created. Now suppose when you want to start, you can see the score is displayed here. Now in all the games that you have played, you can see the score always starts with 0. So you can the start value, you can set the start value for a variable using this by typing it here. Currently the score of my game is 0. This block will help you to set the value of your game for your variable. Next is the change by block. The change by one block will help you to change the value of your variable when you are running the project. You can specify the value by which you want to increase. Like suppose if I drag this variable, currently the value of the score variable is 0. If I click on the change score by one block, then you can see the value has changed by 1. Also, this is the block which will, this score block, you can see this oval block will store the value. So here too the value is 1. If I click on it again, you can see the value has again been incremented by 1 and the new value for score is 2. Similarly, here you can see the value is 2. So this block stores the value of the variable. You can also duplicate sprites by selecting the sprite you want to duplicate and right click on it and select the duplicate option. You can see the duplicated sprite in here in the sprites list. You can rename this duplicated sprite to say cat. So you have got 2 cats on the stage. Now suppose if you have written some code here, suppose if you first duplicate this sprite without giving any instructions, then whatever code you write for this sprite will not be shown here. If I create a duplicate, suppose I coded the ball to I gave the instructions to the ball sprite and then I duplicate it, then the code for this sprite, the code will also be duplicated for the ball 2 sprite. When you create a duplicate of the ball, the code will also be duplicated. So this is how it works for when you are duplicating a sprite. In our previous videos, you must have seen me adding random values, that is random positive and negative values, to blocks such as these, and have taught what these values actually mean. So let me explain you what these values mean. For that, let me select a grid backdrop. So this is the XY grid. To move a sprite anywhere on the stage, you need to keep in mind this XY grid. Now these XY grid, let me start by explaining what is the XY grid. The XY grid has 2 lines or axes, which are the x-axis. You can see this is the horizontal line or the sleeping line, which is called as the x-axis, and this vertical or standing line is called as the y-axis. The horizontal or sleeping line contains positive values from here, that is point x0, till here, that is point x240, and it contains negative values on from here till this point minus 240. So in order to understand it more clearly, just keep in mind that the right side of the x-axis has positive values and the left side of this axis has negative values. Also, you can see there is the standing line, which is called as the y-axis. The y-axis, the upper portion or the upper part of this y-axis contains positive values and the lower half contains negative values. So suppose initially your sprite is positioned at this point. Suppose let me just change the values as 0, 0. So initially your sprite is positioned at this point. Whenever you open a new project, if you want to move your sprite to the right side on the stage, that is towards the right side, that is this side on the stage, then whatever values you give have to be positive. If you want to move your sprite to the left side of the stage, that is in this direction, then whatever values you want to give should be negative. So let's see this with an example. Suppose if I'll use the go to XY block. If I want to move my sprite to the left side of the stage, then your X values should be negative. So to do that, first let's just add a -10 value. You can see my sprite has moved a bit to the left. I'll just add a greater value so that you can see the difference. Suppose I want to put 150. I want to move this sprite by 150. So you can see the sprite has moved to the left. Let me position this sprite to the center again. So this is it for the moving the sprite to the left side of the stage. If you want to move your sprite to the right side of the stage, that is in this direction, then the value of x should be positive. So if I put here as 100, then you can see my sprite has moved in this direction, that is in the right direction. So this is all about the x-axis. To move a sprite on the left side, you have to give negative x values, and to move a sprite on the right side, you have to give positive x values. Coming to the y-axis. If you want to move your sprite in the upwards direction, that is in this direction, then your y values should be positive. So if keeping my x 0, if I keep my y as 100, then my sprite will move in the up direction. If I want to bring my sprite in the downwards direction, that is in this direction, then my y values will be negative. So if I give a negative y value, then my sprite will move in the downwards direction, as you can see here. So this is how you move the sprite on the stage. Moving on to, let's see how we can build a simple project using sounds and animation. Let's build a fun musical project. In this project, we'll be using an instrumental sprite, say any musical instrument sprite, and we will make this sprite, to produce some sounds by using some sounds from the sounds tab. So let's get started. First, we will be deleting this default sprite as we don't require it for our project. Next, go to the sprite library by clicking on choose a sprite icon. Next, let's search for some music instruments by clicking on the music category. Now you can see here there are multiple musical instruments. Let's select the saxophone instrument or sprite, and we will be producing sound for this sprite. Let's add a backdrop to make it look more beautiful. So go to the choose a backdrop and click, and it will direct you to the Scratch backdrop library. You can see there are multiple backdrops. Let's select something related to music, and yes, we have a theater and a concert and all, but let's select go to all. Let's select the raise backdrop. Let's increase the size of this sprite by 200. So now it's looking very good. What do you say? So here we are done with designing this project. Now let's code this sprite in such a way that when we click on this sprite, it should start playing some sounds. So to do that, let's go to the code tab, and in the events, and from the events menu, select the when this sprite clicked block. When you click on the sprite, the blocks for this event will be run. Now let's select the sound block from the sound menu. Start sound, we'll be using the start sound block. Here already we have a sound called as C2 sax. Now each sound should be played after a wait of some seconds. So go to the control menu and select the wait 1 second block. Let's say I want to play the sound a bit quicker, so I'll just reduce this one to say some random value. Now go to the sound menu again and select the start sound block. Here, since we have a lot of options to select from, so next we'll be selecting the G sax sound. Again, just duplicate this set of blocks and place it here. Now from here select the C sax. So now you can see I have added 3 sounds here for this saxophone to play when I click on it. You can add multiple sounds here, but I will stop at 3. Now let's see this program in action. So when I click on this, you can see it played the sound. Keep watching our videos in the Scratch video series for more such fun and exciting projects. Thank you for watching.